Hey everyone, my name is Navan Kothari, and I'm here with Justin Brown, a scholar, motivational speaker, educator, and minister. How are you today, Justin?
Man, I'm doing good. Wonderful day, beautiful outside. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so kind of just to start off, read a little bit into your work and did a little research. You promote the idea of go one more. So I don't know if you wanted to touch a little bit on it and kind of what those few words mean to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the genesis of where the Go One More came from. Is actually, so I'm a football guy. I played football, high school, college, coached football for some years before I got out and went into administrative work. But my favorite player growing up was a guy named Warren Sapp. Played defensive line, most notably for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and was like an absolute beast. I mean, the dude was just everything. So he was my idol growing up. And I listened to one of his interviews where he was talking one time, and he was talking about his mentality when he plays. And he said, I tell myself every game, like every down, go until your heart explodes and then go one more.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, that's it. That's like, that's the mantra for life, right? It's like, go until you're at the point of exhaustion and then find it somewhere in you deep inside to go one more. Because it's usually just that one more time that puts you over the hump that you're fighting up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of you see that there's like I don't know, it's that graphic or thing on that you see on social media in different places where it's like two guys digging for diamonds and one quits like one chop away from the diamonds and the other guy finishes the chop and he finds a diamond, right? So it's like that is generally like whatever it is. So if it's you're trying to find a job, it's generally like that one more job that you need to apply for. That's the job you're going to get. If you're trying to be the best in your sport, it's that one more rep, right? That you need to go each time. And so just that mentality of, listen, I got to go until I'm extremely tired, but then I got to find it in me to do one more. And that's probably where my breakthrough is going to come through. And if it's not this time, maybe it's the next time where you're exhausted and you go that one more. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're often at one step. I feel like people are like, oh, I'm not getting it, but it's not one more step, one more effort, and who knows what happens there.
It takes time, man. That's the thing I think people don't realize is everything takes time, right? Some things happen quick, but most things take time. Like, one of the things I'm a big reader, so I love reading. Malcolm Gladwell's books are all good if anybody needs some reading material. And he talks about how we think about overnight successes, right? Mm-hmm. And we think like people will just happen because we hear that all the time. Well, they were an overnight success, but most overnight successes are like years in the making. Right. And like one of the things he gives a story about the Beatles and how like the Beatles used to play in this pub like 7 nights a week for X amount of hours every night before they finally made it. And everybody thought they just came out of nowhere. But it's like, no, like they were grinding it out.
Yeah, put the work in for sure. Yeah.
Day in, day out, man. So it's just patience, man. And that's what that go one more concept is also about, right? That patience of just keep going and it'll happen.
Yeah. So you've spoken in a variety of places, impacted a lot of people. What kind of brought you into this career? How did you pursue this? And what are some of the challenges of it? And what do you also enjoy about it?
Man, I hope I've impacted a lot of people. That's
I hope so.
Let's not say that too soon. No, man, I think this has been my life, right? At a young age, I was in middle school. Again, I played football growing up, and I remember being in middle school. And you play football. I'm from a little small football town, and everybody's dream is to go to the NFL, right? Yeah. That's what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to go to the NFL. But I remember being in middle school and just saying, man, I want to be a coach so I can change kids' lives, right? That was like, that's been me from the very beginning. And it's just something in my heart that says like, man, it's stuff out there for you to do for people, right? Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's another one of my favorite authors, he has an interview where he makes this statement. I heard this about a year ago and it resonates. So when he was like, when he writes, because people think his writing is very kind of pessimistic, but it's very truthful, right? So and sometimes the truth isn't always like good news, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, for me, writing, I write because I owe the people something, right? It's just, that's what I tell myself. And I think that's true, man. I feel like I owe people something because there are people who poured into me, impacted me, who gave their time. There are coaches who stayed after practice to work with me, who came to, when I didn't have a ride, came to my house and picked me up. There are teachers who stayed with me after school to help me. There are ministers who stayed and spent extra time with me to help me figure things out. And so people have given so much to me, and it's like I owe people something, and I have to give it back to them. So when I got into coaching, that was the whole goal. And for me, the thing that was missing with the coaching world is, as a coach, sometimes it's hard for our players to disconnect that coach and that mentor role.
Mhm.
And there's still that. And I think some coaches do it well. I don't know that I did it great. And so I was like, I'd much rather be a mentor specifically than a coach, because I can mentor without coaching. And I just don't balance it well. That's just me being self-aware. And so I stepped out of coaching and went into an administrative role where I got to spend more time with students and athletes outside of their sport. And it allowed me to pour into them in a different kind of way. And I think it's been great. So hopefully that impact has been there. Hopefully some lives have been changed, and hopefully that continues to grow on a greater level.
Yeah, it's great. I think that self-awareness part you touched on, like seeing the mentor and the coach part, I think it's like pretty important there, because each person like plays a different role, whether it can be a parent or even a teacher. Just each one has a different role.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just knowing your strengths, man. I just took a strength finders test a couple weeks ago. And so figuring out your strengths and diving into your strengths, and that's okay, right? You're not,
Right.
we're all built to do different things. And that's why we work together. If we can work together, if we get over some of our selfish ambitions, when we work together, we complete the mission through our connectedness together, that solidarity.
Right. So kind of just before we go into some specific topics, when we talk about a leader and leadership, they encompass a variety of characteristics. They might be assertive, understanding, motivated, whatever it is. But what do you think are some characteristics about a leader that are often just overlooked, that we might not think of, but a leader really has?
To be a servant, I think, is the best leadership quality you can have, right? I think to serve people in a way that's unfamiliar to them, because that's not a common thing in leadership, right? A lot of times in leadership, you're looking for the people who you lead to serve you. But when you come in as a leader, you serve people, it changes everything. And I think what's important about that is, what's a derivative of that is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can be in charge of people, leading people, and remain humble, that is important, right? That's the characteristic that you gotta have, because a lot of times, I would venture to say, if we sat here on this podcast for the next 5 hours, which we're not going to do, but if we sat here for the next 5 hours and we went through 1,000 leaders,
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you the vast majority of them fail at some point because of ego, right?
Probably,
Simply because of ego and a lack of humility. And that humility is what separates good leaders from great leaders, and leaders that are sustained and have. Because you can be a good leader and have a great sustaining leadership career where people will talk about you after you're gone, but they may talk about you in a bad way. Right. But if you want to be a leader who has a great legacy behind him, where people talk about you in this way that they marvel at you and they respect you, and it's all about humility, man. It's all about humility.
Yeah, it's often I say overlooked. Like, you don't think of a leader have to be like, obviously you want to talk and be assertive, but being humble at the same time, kind of finding that balance is difficult, as you're saying. Like, we can look at those 1,000 leaders, and there's probably been times where they just didn't have that in them at that certain time. It can be a real challenge.
Yeah, when you say that, it made me think. One of my professors in grad school made the statement. He said, leadership. This was a leadership class I was taking. He said, leadership is really about the balance between tough and tender.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of encompassed it very well. It's like when to be tough on the people you serve and when to be tender, because it calls for both of them. And I think, if you're going to be a leader, there's an element of ego that you have to have. It's not like you're void of ego or some kind of sense of self-pride, right? Which is not bad in and of itself. It's when there's too much of that, right? So balancing that, you can either say the tough and the tender, or the ego and the humility, right? Balancing that in a way that serves your people the best.
Right. So again, talking about leadership, when we bring it into our youth community and the upcoming generation, what are ways that they can get involved in leadership roles, at a young age? And what do you think are the benefits of this step? of starting early? Because some people are like, oh, you might be, a young teenager, and you're like, you're not there yet. But what is an advantage of putting that young teenager in a leadership role?
Man, I would say, and this is just my person, I would say volunteering, right? I think there's no better way to add value to somebody who's a leader than volunteering. Again, that goes back to the idea of serving, of being that servant. But volunteering, and I've obviously working in higher ed and working with students to read articles about kind of what trends are. And it talks about how, there's obviously a mental health crisis kind of going on, right, especially within young people. And the article was talking about how specifically volunteering is helping so many people with mental health issues. And I believe that to be true because there's so much intrinsic value to volunteering, right? That's, it's giving me more self-worth because I'm adding worth to people. I'm giving to people who can't give back to me. I'm doing this in a very selfless way. It just helps you see so many different things. And I think the biggest thing, and I encourage a lot of my students to volunteer because it also helps you figure out what you want to do in life, and it gives you a purpose behind it. So even if you, and it's not to say like, hey, if you're on the trajectory to be a doctor, or a lawyer making a bunch of money in life, that volunteering is going to make you say you want to stop that and go, serve in some indigenous village and be poor, right? Yeah. But it's saying, hey, I can go do this, but there are also times where I can go serve in these areas or serve people who are underrepresented. And that adds value to me, right? Because they're, again, we all have a part to play in this, right? So we still need doctors who are great. We still need lawyers who are great. But there's still an element of service that helps you and builds you in a way that I think nothing else can. And it helps you see different, especially depending on your background, it helps you see where people come from, right? I'm a big question asker. So I ask a lot of questions. And so when I get to go serve and I get to sit down with people, I just like to sit and ask questions and figure out where they came from, right? And figure out, how did they get here? And again, you like in some of those situations where you serve, you realize people want to be there, right? Yeah. Which is okay. But how do I help you be here and be as happy as can be, right? And be as content as you can be. So you get to learn different stories. You get to learn about life. You get exposed to many different things. And you just learn in a way. So I would say serving people, but also serving kind of in the political system in some regard. I'm not saying you got to go be president or mayor, but finding some way to serve. Because it matters. It matters. If people matter, the way our laws and things are constructed matter as well. So you can volunteer and learn more about it or put your time into that, but it helps you even as you're trying to navigate. So,
Yeah, I think really at a young age, making it more about than just yourself, like saying volunteering is a great way to make it, you're serving other people, putting yourself out there. And it kind of carries on in your personality and starts becoming natural. Like, I want to help these people out, not because I want the name or anything, but just because it's a part of who you are. Yeah, and it kind of carries on. Which is kind of difficult in a selfie culture. I know that's kind of what people say, but it's true. I mean, we as human beings are naturally selfish, right? You have no issue. Like nobody purposely starves themselves unless they're like on some extreme diet and trying to lose weight or something like that. But if you're hungry and you got food, you're going to eat, right? That's who you are. And so doing things that remove you from that selfish nature that we have kind of naturally is always going to be beneficial. And you can't serve people too much. There's no such thing as that. So kind of going into, again, youth development a little bit, we talk about setting goals. What are the right ways to set goals? What kind of goals to set? The timeline for these goals. So based on, your experience, what kind of works for you? What do you think works for other people in setting goals and accomplishing these? Because there are a lot of ways to, set goals and accomplish them. What do you think is really the best way? Yeah, I think in goal setting, I think it's important to be realistic. So if I, like what I do every year is I spend some time kind of sitting down and writing, thinking through goals for the year. And so that may be at the beginning of the year, or it may just be at a point where I complete what I need to complete. So I wouldn't say that I'm like this January 1st or December 31st, whatever it is that I sit down and write, because that's not necessarily true. I kind of get to a point where I've kind of achieved what I need to achieve, and I'm going back to kind of start the next round of things I'm thinking through. And so, if I'm going to sit down and write maybe 5-6 goals, I'm going to, probably 4 or 5 of those are going to be
realistic. They're going to challenge me. They're going to be realistic. And then one or two of those deals are going to be things that I really got to reach for, right? Things that are really going to challenge me. Things where some stuff, where they say the stars must align in order for it to happen, right?
Yeah.
Some things that are going to take extreme faith to happen, because I think those are good, right? And those are things that usually circle back to the next list of goals as well. And so it's okay for goals to be on your list for 2, 3, 4 years, right? I mean, that's a part of being realistic.
Right.
Like right now, I have a list of goals that I wrote in like 2016. It's like 10 of them, and I think I'm through about 6 of them.
Okay.
And I got 4 left, and I still have about 5, 6 years to complete them. You know what I mean? Because I gave myself that time. I was realistic of like, hey, this is, one of them is to get a doctorate degree. And I gave myself a certain amount of time because life happens. I wasn't going to be like, because sometimes we're unrealistic and stuff doesn't happen and then we get down on ourselves. Right, it's like, no, it's okay. And even on that, right, setting your goals and being okay with adjusting. Because life does happen and you do have to make those. But I think being realistic, I think writing it down and seeing it in front of you is important. So I do think that is a thing, to put it somewhere. So, I'll write my goals down. I'm kind of old school in that. I like to write. I can do the electronic and the technology, but I like writing. So I write mine down, and then I'll type them in my phone just to have them so I can go back to them if I'm not with the pad that I have written down. So, because seeing that sometimes reminds you, and it helps you make those decisions. So this is the thing about goals, or when you're at certain parts in life, if you have things that you're trying to achieve and you've written them down, it helps you make decisions that you would have to think about had you not had them written down, if that makes sense, right? So, like if I say I'm committed to, all right, I'm gonna go a diet thing. If I'm committed to not eating fried foods, right? If I say I'm committed to not eating fried foods, if somebody says, hey, we're gonna have a fried chicken dinner at the house tomorrow at 3, you want to come? Because I'm committed to that, I already have my answer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't have to think about whether I want to go or not. I'm not eating fried foods, right? We all have anything not fried? No, it's just fried chicken and fried chicken, right? So it's like, okay, well, I'm not coming. I can't be there. So when you have your goals written down, you see them, you're committed to them, it helps you what to say no to, right? So if it is to accomplish a certain thing and something is pulling you in a different direction, you can automatically say, no, I'm not doing that because I'm committed to my goals that I have written down. So it helps in giving you that direction and that guidance. It makes you think a little bit less.
Yeah, I think sometimes we underestimate how much writing our goals can help because we're like, I'll get it done. But when you, like you're saying, when you see it every day, if it's on your fridge, on your mirror, on your phone, whatever it is, it's kind of just translating your brain. Oh, I have to do this when you see it every single day.
Yeah, I think, and if anybody watching this, who's listening to this, if you start watching YouTube videos on your brain and how it works, you'll start to understand how important that stuff is. Because your brain, I heard one guy talk about, he's like, your brain is a supercomputer, right? And you got to program it. And once you program it, it works in a way that makes you so much more efficient. And that's important, right? That helps you accomplish those things you want to accomplish.
Yeah. So again, kind of to my next question, based on, you've had a wide variety of collegiate experience from like Mercer to Furman, North Greenville University. So kind of just any advice you have for the upcoming generation, whether it's in a career pursuit or putting yourself out there, leadership, whatever it is, what kind of words of wisdom do you have for them?
Yeah, and Presbyterian College too. I don't want to leave them out. I don't want anybody from there to see this and be like, "Oh, he's not claiming us." I spent 1 year there coaching football. So my biggest thing would just, especially this generation, man, just be patient, right? Be patient and be diligent. Stay at what you're doing and just allow the time it takes, because it's easier, and right now it's just in a time where you can see people who may be peers who are, even like high school kids right now are, making tons of money from social media or just different. Maybe it's easier to start a business now than ever. It's easier to do, and some people are being successful at that. But that doesn't mean you got to do that, right? Run your race. Allow for the time it takes for your race to get to a certain checkpoints in life, and don't compare, right? That comparison is what really steals kind of your happiness in life. And I think that's one of the things social media does to us. And it just takes away that joy of like when I make a checkpoint, because it's like if I get to a checkpoint where I should be celebrating, I'm looking at somebody else who's further than me, and I'm not celebrating because I'm a little bit envious of where they're at. It's like, no, man, celebrate your checkpoints, and just be patient in the process and just keep working at it, right? There's this, I think it's an African proverb, and it talks about how they have this saying where they go, chop wood, carry water. Because that's kind of like how they survive. And this is, so it's like everything in life is about chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water, right? You do it every day because that's survival. It's like the same thing, man. Just do what you do every day. You're surviving, and you're going to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Or you're going to realize you don't want to be where you thought you want to be. I've been there, right? I've changed careers once or twice in my life, and that's okay, right? But I've been patient in the process and haven't rushed things. And so just being patient, and I think as you talk about leadership, the patience is good. The other part I mentioned a little bit is that self-awareness, right? Having some introspection where you're looking internally to assess who you are, where you are, being honest with yourself, and being honest with who you are and what your capabilities are. And really, this is kind of my goal for this year. So we're talking about goals. My goal this year has been to attack my weaknesses. And so where we kind of shy away from our weaknesses and kind of like, I don't want to do that because I'm not good at that. For me, I'm like, no, I want to attack my weaknesses, right? I want to attack the things that I'm not strong at, because that's going to make me better. And I'm not attacking them to become an expert or to be great at them. I'm attacking them because it's a hurdle that once I get over, it allows me to see, man, I can do this, and I'm better at it than I thought I was. Yeah,
I think especially, like you said, being patient, especially when people are in high school, like, you're like 17, 18, you feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything. Just take your time, take your time, whatever it is, especially going into comparing. I feel like high school is an environment where you're like, everyone's just comparing regardless of what it is. You kind of have to put yourself out of there and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on myself and go from there.
Listen, high school and college, should the students go to college? Those are fun times where you have minimal cares, right? When you get out of there and you got real world problems, then it becomes a little bit more stressful. But it's like, if you can teach yourself to enjoy the moment, right? To live in the moment and be present. If you can start teaching yourself that at an early age, man, life will take care of itself. Yeah.
So kind of just to, wrap it up, what kind of future works are you looking towards? Anything, any speaking events, maybe writing a book, whatever it is, anything you're pursuing, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, man. So I actually have some things in work. So I got a podcast that I'm currently working. I got a couple episodes I got to get into. I'm not great at editing. So I'm trying to find somebody who can be my editor with those podcasts, but working on a podcast that hoping to get out here in the next few months.
Right.
And then got a couple book ideas that I'm starting to work on. So that writing component is a place, that's one of my weaknesses. And so that's what I'm taking an online class for writing. So I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. And so, that's just me being honest. And so, hoping to get through that class and then really start etching out a book or two here over the next few years. And really not necessarily, I'll probably try to get them published, but it's less about getting published and more about being able to tell a story and having it written down. Especially for me now, it's kind of like for my family to be able to have and do that. So working on those, man. Speaking engagements kind of have slowed down for me since me and my wife just had twins, and so I'm trying to be at home more and traveling a little bit less.
Right.
But that'll kick back up, I'm sure, sooner than later. But other than that, man, just enjoying family, doing yard work, and working on those things.
Yeah, right. So I just want to say thank you again for your time, Justin, and your responses. Great hearing you talk about leadership, youth development, and goal setting. And I can't wait to see what the future kind of holds for you with these books and speaking events.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.